So, the Toronto Raptors beat the Knicks tonight, and it got me thinking why. The Knicks are more talented than the Raptors, but the Raptors still won. Well, on an individual game by game level, there was a way to explain this. For example, tonight, the Raptors rebounded better, they went on a massive run in the third quarter, and they won the turnover battle. But how about this on a larger scale? Why do less talented teams overperform, and why do some bigger teams and more talented teams underperform? And how are some teams good regular season teams? And how do you overachieve, and how do you become a good regular season team? And I sort of have four main things that I think it might come down to. Obviously, there's way more factors than four, but here are just four big ones that I thought could be pretty useful and interesting. So number one, and I think this one might be the most overlooked, is just playing hard. I mean, so many times, this is why teams can carve out good regular season records despite inferior talent. They're crashing the offensive glass, they're forcing turnovers, they're rebounding, they're doing all the things that teams who play hard do. And a great example of this are the Raptors, who are just a team that play hard. I think of the bubble season, the season after Kawhi left, where they weren't super talented. They had good players like Kyle Lowry, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, Fred VanVleet, but they weren't as talented to be the 2 seed in the NBA, and they're the second best team in the NBA. And obviously there's a lot of factors that go into that, but one of them was just playing hard. The Knicks last year were also a great example of this. They're the 4 seed despite being less talented than some of the teams around them, because every single night they brought the intensity and they played hard. And that might not be how you win against the Nets in the playoffs when everyone is playing hard, but it is how you win against the Celtics in January. It's how you win those smaller games, and playing hard is a big part of that. Every NBA game is worth one win. So if you're able to just play hard and beat the smaller teams, or I'm saying like the less talented teams, odds are you'll be able to make the playoffs. Okay, my second thing is to have a set defensive scheme. I think this is also a big part. One of the examples I'm going to use, the Bucks, or really any Mike Budenholzer team throughout the years. The Bucks, they rolled off back-to-back 60-win seasons, I believe, in Giannis's 2 MVP years, and big reason for that is defensively, they had a set scheme where they protect the rim and they prevent corner threes, and that's what they do. They allow mid-rangers, they allow above-the-break threes to inferior shooters, and it worked. They had one of the best defenses in the NBA for those 2 seasons because they had a set scheme and everyone knew the goal. And same thing with the Jazz last year, and over the past couple of years, they have Rudy Gobert. He's their defensive identity. They have him sit back in the paint and they have him protect the rim, and they also run shooters off the 3-point line, and it leads to one of the best defenses in the NBA consistently. So playing to your strengths and having a set defensive scheme is absolutely massive for being a top regular season team. Okay, number 3 is to have depth. I think this is very important and overlooked in the regular season, especially in modern times when players are resting more and things like that are happening. Just the ability to throw out no bad players. Great example, the Grizzlies last year, this year, they go 10 or 11 deep in NBA players who you feel comfortable with having on the floor. The Hawks this year and last year, they have like 3 guys who can reasonably play in each position. Or even the Wizards this year have been a surprising team. They have a ton of guys. They have guys like Montrezl Harrell, KCP, guys who aren't star players but who are solid NBA players. And if you have a lot of those guys, you're able to cover up injuries. You're able to survive off nights from certain players, and it's a big it's a good way to be a solid regular season team. This also works the opposite way, where if you're playing bad players, it can really hurt you. Like I think to the Celtics last year, where they're pretty much getting nothing from guys like Semi Ojeleye and Grant Williams. So I think having a lot of depth is very important and a bit underrated, especially in the regular season. And finally, having a shot creator who can bail you out end of possession when things break down. And my example are last year the Suns and the Jazz, where especially the Jazz, their offense is so systematic with the pick and rolls and with Gobert setting screens, but they also had guys like Donovan Mitchell, Mike Conley, and Jordan Clarkson who can just make a shot and beat the defender one-on-one when you give it to them with 6 seconds on the shot clock and not much is going on. Because sometimes obviously high-powered offenses are able to create a lot of good looks, but sometimes it just boils down to isolation, and you need a guy who can create a shot. So obviously, overall, if you're very talented, you don't need these things. For example, the Nets, I mean, they have depth. I'd say that's the one, but defensively, they're usually not great, though they have sort of like the switching scheme. They don't really play that hard, but they do have two great players, three when they have Kyrie. So you don't need these things. I'd say these are more for overperforming teams. The Raptors, the Knicks, the Jazz, I'd say are a good example of this. Playing hard, having a set defensive scheme, having depth, and having a shot creator. And do these work in the playoffs? Definitely a bit less, because in the playoffs, I think it sort of flips what you need. I think you still need shot creators, but I think it's less about depth and who are like your best 8 guys. Could be an interesting video looking into what's needed for success in the playoffs versus the regular season. But this is sort of what I believe is needed to be a good regular season team in the NBA, or an overperforming regular season team in the NBA. But anyways, thanks for watching. Leave a like and subscribe to this channel for more NBA content.